Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's choosing to join us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that particular chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for the past 20 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process from that page. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download from that page a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to use them, listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store, and if you type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains a reality management worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Drag-On Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so by giving us a call. You can go to your browser and go to zoom.us, and there's a whole host of numbers there you can use. And once you're tapped into the zoom.us, all you need to do is enter our meeting ID number. And since I don't have it committed to memory yet, I'm scrolling here to pick it up. And the meeting ID for the first hour is 853-2357-4173. 853-2357-4173. And if you call on your phone, you can listen in, and you can use *6 to mute and unmute yourself, and or you can open a browser window, go to zoom.us and enter that meeting ID number and join us live. Alternately, you can send me an email. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. You can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or comment from you, we will address it on the show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And you can follow the show for the archives on wherever you get your podcasts. The one I use that's most reliable for me is the Apple Podcast Store. And you can access that even from a web browser. You do not have to have an Apple device to access the Apple Podcasts. So it is it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to have you joining us, and we're wide open for questions and comments today. I had a thought come to me just as clear as a bell the other day. Boy, here's what I should read next. Here's what I should do on the internet show next. And I didn't write it down. And now it's completely out of my mind. So it will come back if it was the right idea, and we'll follow it. So in the meantime, we're inviting comments, questions.
So, Dr. Tim.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. You've been mentioning that book that's not quite published yet. Have you read any more of it, or you don't have any advanced copy of it, do you?
No, what I've done is had interviews with the author that I've listened to. She's had one male and 2 or 3 females that I've listened to their interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And she has another book that is her memoir that she's already published that can be, if you go to IngridClayton.com or DrIngridClayton.com, I forget what the actual website is, but once there, let me see, I'm trying to pull up the book. I looked it up earlier today. And it's like Remember Me or Accept Me or Listen to Me. It's her memoir, and it's the previous book that she authored. Go ahead.
Okay, because I was wondering what I guess I want is the Cliff Notes. I don't want to buy a book and go through it, especially when I think I know why I've fawned in my life. Unless she has some remarkable new insights. I wasn't going to do that, but I'd love to have, if you got the book and found some things that were really surprising and added to the store of information we have on that, I'd love it.
Believing Me
is
her memoir.
Okay.
And the subtitle is Healing from Narcissistic Abuse and Complex Trauma. So that's her memoir, which is already out.
Okay.
And what's happening with the Fawning book, which I'm getting from some of the interviews she's doing in preparation for it, is that she's and in the intro, Dr. Dick Schwartz, I believe he's a doctorate, but anyway, Dick Schwartz, who is the creator of the internal family systems model and the author of a number of books in that area, he talks about his praise for the book because she's doing what he encourages, which is to understand that instead of calling people sick or crazy or having a pathology because they have these patterns in their lives, instead understand that each of these patterns that show up in people is an adaptive response to a difficult situation that at whatever level the individual decided this is too much for me, I can't handle it. So they create the fawning response, or they create the shutting down and splitting off that we call dissociating, or they create a pattern like obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's really possible, and there are important ways to see all of that as adaptive rather than maladaptive, or rather than pathological.
Right.
And so that's just one of the aspects that's coming out of the work.
So I'd be led to the question, I should start from the other end and just tell something that's happening with our grandson, who is transitioning now to becoming a granddaughter. His one contact with our family is my husband, Tim. And Tim is very good with him, patient, doesn't say much, does a lot of listening. If there's anything good that she says on the phone, Tim will grab that and say, "That's great. I'm glad you're doing that," or "Congratulations," whatever. But the other day, Tim got a call from our daughter, the mother of this daughter, saying, because the grandson has, I'll just call him my grandson. It's not finished yet. So anyway, my daughter was told my grandson is turning 25. He comes into a small inheritance. Well, it's not that small. And he also is going to have to take over the ownership of his car, which has been in his mother's name for years. She's been paying his insurance. Meanwhile, he's using weed, alcohol, and LSD and maybe other things. And so she is not giving him money anymore, and said to my husband, "Would you talk to Jacob, ask him to accept the papers I'm about to send, hard copy, go to the DMV, get his insurance, make sure he has his license with him so he can own his car." And Tim delivered that message. And my grandson literally shot himself in the foot by saying, "I'm going to block you. You're abusing me. You're just delivering nasty messages from my mother, and I don't want to hear any of it." And that was the end of that. Now, that's the last contact that this boy has with any of his family, and his partner has left him. The partner claims that he's been horrible and cruel, and he says the partner's been cruel, and so now he's utterly alone. He's not eating. His apartment is just a room, and it's totally squalid, filthy dishes, bugs everywhere. It freaks him out. He says yesterday he ate a part of a chicken wing or something. That was it. He's very thin, anorectic, I would say. All that by way of saying that my understanding is that there is no way to get to him when he's like this. And he's going to be like this because he believes he needs the drugs. And we're blackmailing him by saying, we'll help you financially in every way possible if you get into rehab. And he won't do it. You're talking about, you said the word narcissism in there, narcissistic abuse, and that was the bridge. Fawning's one thing. He doesn't fawn at all, but he is the victim of serious narcissistic abuse from his father, and he wasn't protected by his mother. And where am I going?
So let me just stop you right there.
Okay.
Ask you to take a breath, and just on this one point, for your own adjustment to this, instead of saying he's the victim of serious narcissistic abuse, I'm about to offer you a different way to think about and speak about this.
All right.
That's more in alignment with what I was just talking about.
Okay.
Rather than pathologizing this and saying, he's sick, he's crazy, whatever. Instead of saying he's the victim of serious narcissistic abuse, try some form of the following statement using your own words or your own perspective that says, it's fairly clear that he developed his coping mechanisms in the midst of a very intense family situation and a narcissistic father or mother or whatever. Just feel the difference there. Instead of saying he's the victim of serious narcissistic abuse, we say he's developed his coping mechanisms in the context of this family pattern that was so troubled.
Yeah. I can easily do that, and I do think that's true.
Well, then start, right? Start right there.
Okay.
Because then what you start to see is what's coming out of him is his best way of coping at this stage in his life.
Yeah.
And what he's doing with his coping you might say is, well, he's running from X, Y, or Z, right? He's not facing the truth of, etc. He needs to heal this or that. As long as you stay in those thought patterns, then it's you deciding what he needs to do rather than recognizing he's an independent person. He's an independent soul, if you want to say that. He's here for whatever personal growth or challenges um, best meet his situation. And it's going to shift, or at least it does for me every time I do this kind of thing. And I've worked with lots of people who found the same thing. It shifts the energy you have about it. It shifts any sense of urgency you have. So instead of blindly rushing in, as into a burning building, you're assessing the situation, your resources and his from a more calm, centered, and hopefully more loving space. It's going to yield better results. What you do is going to be more in line with what might be effective and helpful to him. What you do is going to be more in line with doing your own work and dismantling your own anger, fear, sadness, hurt, guilt, shame that might come up as you're interacting with the family or as you're interacting with him.
I agree with all of that. The point of contact has been reduced to nothing. So I realize I can do my own work, breathe, and send him the best, most loving thoughts, which I do. It's funny how the connection is never going to be broken because we care about him. But there's nothing on any conscious, practical level that we can do outside of those things. We're going to need him to come to us. And the hard part was the one contact who was Tim Bingham has just been, that door has been closed. Now maybe it'll open up and he'll pretend nothing happened and he'll call and he'll text and whatever. But even with those, it's all blame. I do feel that just as you say, he's coping. He's terrified and he's coping as best he can. How to get through.
Yes. And if in your response to that, you start generating any negative emotions, that's your most important work.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of negative emotion.
Yeah, that's your most important work right now.
Okay.
Because in truth, if you're awake and aware and you've got access to tools like this, there's at least a solid chance from our past experience and what we know about humans and how we work with our minds, our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, that you can dismantle those emotions. And as you do, your whole view of who he is, who you are, your role in this, and what you might do is going to expand exponentially. So in a situation where you think, there's absolutely nothing I can do, it's hopeless, it's helpless, etc., you might discover a myriad of things that you do that you would never see otherwise. And they're not directly related to rushing in like a knight on a white horse to rescue somebody. It's just doing the most loving, productive thing you can with your mind and your energy and your time and intelligence and your money. We've been at this off and on, you and I, talking about your family and your grandkids, etc., for a lot of years, and we talked about the potential of the potential benefits of doing something like an intervention for one of your grandkids, etc. So when that kind of thing is up, if you've got the resources and if what they're doing lends them or their energy to be willing to get help, then you take the steps and you use what you have control over to get help. But in a situation like this, he is an adult, he is autonomous, And unless he's directly working to hurt himself or somebody else, you have to let him have his life.
Mm. Well, that unless he is doing something directly to hurt himself, I would say he is. Maybe you don't see it that way, and that might be helpful if you didn't. But I feel as if we do need to go in there and grab him by the ear and put him in some protected situation.
Well, and that might be. I don't know enough about the situation to tell you. I'm not, like if he's in imminent danger, then mobilize your resources and call the police or call the paramedics or call whoever would support you in that area and get him the help that you think he can benefit from. But if it's not a situation where the police are going to say, "Oh yeah, we can't have people living with dirty dishes. We're going in to get them and throw them in a hospital,"
Okay, right.
Unless it's that kind of thing, then
Yeah.
they're not going to be likely to intervene.
Yeah. Well, I guess it hasn't gone that far. So anyway, thanks, Dr. Tim. I don't need to keep the whole meeting going on this one.
Okay, so take a breath and let's just clarify what was being said about Dr. Ingrid Clayton's book on fawning.
Yeah.
My hope in talking about these different books and presenting them is to help people understand what they might do directly in their own lives,
Mm.
right? It is not an intention that I hold to have everybody who hears these radio shows read every book
Right.
or listen to every podcast because there are only so many hours in the day, and I frequently work with people trying to help them set healthy boundaries and limits so they don't get overstressed and they don't set themselves up for burnout, or they don't inadvertently contribute their energy to a pattern that becomes abusive in their relationships. So I think it's fine if you have, no critical interest in it, that you don't get her book or read it. I don't even say to people, you really need to read The Way of Mastery, because I have no idea that they would resonate with it or would have any positive impact on their life. I know that it really deeply resonated with me, but it hit my life at just the right time. Just like
Mm.
the book, The Mirror Theory, hit my life at just the right time. And uh, I know people that don't like that book, The Mirror Theory. I know people that they start reading, put it down, and never go back, and that's okay. We're all individuals. We're all in our own way. And despite what some people like to say about, I know what you need to be doing, and this is what you have to, despite that, whether it's a
Mhm.
spiritual teacher or a religious teacher, the core of the teaching we're offering is you are the only one that can find out what's the best thing for you to be doing. And the source of that wisdom is probably in your core. Turn
Mm.
the focus inside, slow down, ask to be shown, as Michael Ryce would say, you know, align your antenna to the creative source, the God energy,
Mm.
you know, set a trap for God, tune into it, trust your own intuition, insight, and inspiration. And then often the question comes back, especially from minds that have been trained in the Western world, the question comes back, well, how do I know the difference between, my insight and just my ego?
Mhm.
The big tip for me is that when it's my insight, if it's true intuition or inspiration, there's a calm
Mm.
certainty about it,
That's true.
right? There's
That's
no
true.
panicked certainty. There's no, I've got
Mhm.
to get over there and I've got to, it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I should make my way over there.
Mm.
A case in point is this morning. I was given the news last Friday that a gentleman I've known and who's rented office space from us for 25 years, passed away on Wednesday night. And so there's been a lot of emotion around that. His daughter-in-law called me the next day and said, I'd like to get some assistance with this. Frank is a wonderful guy. He was 77. He has been a therapist his whole adult life. And he's not necessarily a technophobe, but he didn't really deal with computers that much. He didn't keep his schedule on his phone or a computer. He had everything handwritten.
Mm.
And believe it or not, his daughter-in-law said to me, we can't read his notes.
Oh.
We can't decide who's coming for a session and when. We can't, he's got calendars all over the place. This is a guy who fit the profile of the absent-minded professor. You
Mm.
know, not uncommon to see him walk in to see patients or come out of a session and his shirt is half untucked and his hair is disheveled and,
Yeah.
just that kind of a,
Mm.
not that interested in the outside trappings.
Yeah.
Well, now they've got some difficulty and he rents office space from us 2 days
Yeah.
a week. So she
Mm.
said, would you be willing to put up a note to let people know? And of course, um, I have a response to that. First, absolutely anything I can do to help. And my next response is, oh boy, I would hate to be a patient who shows up for a session and sees your therapist died.
Yeah.
So how to make that, gentle and smooth over and whatever. So we talk about it and we go through Monday. And so here's Tuesday morning. And this is a morning that he normally has patients coming early in the morning. And as I'm doing my regular work and I don't have to be in the office until 10, I just got this real strong sense that, Tim, you should go. You should be there early. So I get here
Mm.
before 8:30, and sure enough, as I pull in, there's a familiar car in the parking lot. And there's two people sitting in the car. And I think, yep,
Mm.
that's it. It's one of Frank's patients.
Yeah.
So, you know, I come in, I open up, and they don't come in. They're they're scanning the parking lot waiting for his car. So I go back out, go to their car, knock on the window, and explain to them, I ask them, are you here to see Frank? And then I explain to them the situation. If I hadn't listened to that intuition, the world would have gone on. It would have been fine. But it
Mm.
wouldn't have been as loving and gentle for this person to learn that the therapist that they'd known for 40 years died last week. And to have me there to be able to explain to them, we apologize that we weren't able to notify you in advance because of the handwriting thing and because of no computer notes, etc.
Mm.
So, this trusting of the intuition, this slowing down enough to ask and then following the impulses is pretty much the opposite of what we're trained to do in the Western culture. And yet
Mm.
everybody I know who's done more of it in their life ends up glad they did.
Mm.
So the point I'm trying to make is as I'm reading or rereading The Way of Mastery, or I'm reading or rereading The Impersonal Life by Joseph S. Benner, or one of these other books, and then I'm sharing it on the internet show, it's just because there might be tools in there.
Mm.
It's not because the one with the bigger brain wins, or the one with more knowledge in their brain wins. I had a patient on Friday mention in in response to, he also knew Frank and knew that Frank had passed away, and in response to the discussion, he said, you know what, the other day I pulled up and watched the movie Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep from 1991. If you've never watched that movie, it would be of interest to you as a spiritual seeker, and also, somebody who likes a pleasant movie that's not going to have a lot of violence and sex and all that stuff in it.
Thanks for giving that preamble. That's good.
Right. It's a comedy with Albert Brooks. Do you know the name Albert Brooks?
No, I don't.
Okay. So anyway, what happens is he dies. He's a young guy and he's a business person and he dies. And instead of going right to heaven, he goes to the judgment center.
Mm-hmm.
And at the judgment center, it's not judge right, wrong, good, bad. It's just a review to see if you're ready to move on or if you need to go back and cycle through the human life to learn more.
Right.
So if I mention a book or a movie like that, it's my intention is that people actually internalize it and decide how much of that makes sense for me. Is there a tip I can try here? What happens if instead of saying he was a victim of horrible narcissistic abuse, I say he formed his coping mechanisms in that milieu? And so it's easier to understand without pathologizing.
I'm not interested in pathologizing, but I am interested in whether there is hope for him because I have been reading about malignant narcissism, and he sounds exactly point by point like that sort of person. And often in these things I'm reading and listening to, they say these are very difficult people to work with. They may never change. It just seems like the toughest assignment to try to find him. I don't need to give him a label at all. I just did, but I would take it off in a minute if I thought there was some living tissue in there.
If there was living tissue in what?
In him, if he was open in any way, not ossified like a bulwark against everybody.
Okay, well, my mind just wants me to say that regardless of your labels of him and thoughts about him, it doesn't change him.
Right.
So you're saying, he is this and it's intractable, etc. But that doesn't mean it's intractable. It doesn't mean he doesn't have choice. It doesn't mean anything about him as an individual soul or spark of the divine mind. He's got his own path. And to get to that position, you've got to take that expanded, might say 30,000-foot view, or the kind of view that Glennon Doyle talks about in her writing From Unconditional Love about forgiveness, that it's a perspective. It's the zoomed out picture that gets zoomed out so far that you see everything and you understand, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on here than just my physical being in this moment or my history of actions as a person. And there's a lot more going on in his life than the drama and trauma that you're perceiving and labeling and or that he's perceiving and labeling and reacting to. But to do that, we have to wake up and acknowledge that we do not have the control that we've been taught that we have. I don't know who said it first, but I know John Lennon was quoted as saying, life is what happens when we're busy making other plans. And I can take a look at anyone, any interaction I have with people, and my mind wants to offer up all kinds of judgments and assessments, but those judgments and assessments aren't the totality, and they don't, however accurate I might perceive them to be, they do not change the nature of the person or the dynamics of energy flow around me that I'm interpreting as a person or as a situation. So again, if you have a negative emotional state, a tightness or a tension come up as you're viewing this situation, rather than use that as an impetus to say, okay, we got to get busy and figure out what to do, first, this work asks us to turn inside with the breath, turn inside with our focus of awareness, and find out how we are generating the upset we're experiencing in the moment, and then dissipate it, unravel it, and then take a look at the life situation in front of us. And if we can maintain that calm, loving, that ubiquitous awareness, then whatever the picture shows us, let it act on us and let our actions flow in direct response to that without a lot of judgment and thought. And if your mind is saying, well, this is complete nonsense, I understand it, because it sounds like nonsense to the Western trained mind. Just like it sounds like silliness to people if they hear the story where Einstein said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem that was life-threatening, I'd spend 55 minutes trying to decide what the right question is to ask. Not trying to figure out what to do, not trying to amass resources, but if I only had an hour to solve a problem and it's life and death, I'd spend 55 minutes looking at what question is the right question to ask. And once the right question is asked, to me, this says, I've got to be in a rational mind. I've got to be in a calm mind. I can't be in a high pressure analytical mind that's pushing around data points without realizing that that same mind could ask to be shown and get input from another point, from another. And it's like the bigger picture awareness says, I don't know how, I just know it's all going to work out. It's not going to work out the way my mind tells me it should, but it's all going to work out. Whatever, it's kind of like what we say about if my mind shows me some data points and I think, oh, wow, that's a paradox. My mind in that moment does not realize that it's only seeing a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. Is this making sense?
It's making sense, and it's widening the circle so that I really feel as if I'm being told to stretch my arms till it reaches around the entire universe. I'm exaggerating, of course. It's saying that even if he dies, everything will be all right.
Exactly. The core of these teachings is you're not just your body. Look at the great, the neurosurgeon Eben Alexander, who used to believe that consciousness is simply the byproduct of random neural firings.
Mm.
He understands differently now, and he understands that his image and beliefs about things that he's formed and trained into from his physical experience and his Western mind and his medical training, etc., is woefully lacking when it comes to the totality of our experience. It's literally like a kindergarten kid who's throwing a fit because he or she can't have, the biggest ice cream cone the world ever created. I mean, because they don't understand what that would do to their system to ingest that much sugar or et cetera. So they can't, there's so much going on that the kindergarten kid can't see. Well, we're like that. We're literally I believe it was Einstein who said, we are like cats and dogs walking through the Library of Congress. In our lives, in our daily lives, there's so much energy going on. There's so much truth, experience of life that we can't even register through our five senses. It's akin to being a dog or a cat walking through the Library of Congress past all these books that are full of all of this, the vast knowledge of humanity, and they can't access it. We are just like that. There's so much more going on here. I mean, if it helps you, if in order to have any peace at night, you say, I've got to find a way to make sense of this, because you've got one of those minds that's been so trained into the rat race of the rational that you say, okay, let me make up a story that helps me have some peace. All right. You know how you've talked about, and I don't know if you specifically have talked, but people have brought up on this show, what if our current president is doing what he's doing to show us, our shadow side? Or what if Hitler did that? So maybe you make up a story that says, hey, I don't know how, but maybe my grandson or granddaughter is doing what they're doing as a part of a soul contract, and they're going to be the impetus for somebody else to see this is not the right way to do it, and the other person saves their life, even if my son or grandson or daughter ends their life, what I think would be prematurely. That the process of that could set up a ripple effect for X, Y, or Z. I'll offer as just a true life example of this. Back in 2012, I was at HeartLand with Rex, and Rex's son at that time was in his mid-20s, and he was going through some mental health challenges. He was 3.5 years or 4 years into serious mental health challenges, and so as the life events would happen, January of 2013, he ended his life in response to his mental health challenges. Well, this set off a series of events. You might call them healing events, you might call them life events or tragedy. Label, it doesn't matter what you label, but it resulted in the formation of a nonprofit that's mission is to help rewrite the narrative on mental health that gave rise to the Optimal Being program, which is a distillation of Michael Ryce's tools and getting them out there in that way, and the On Your Mind podcast and the ripple effect of whoever might have benefited from that podcast over the years. So if you need, to get some sleep, to have some peace of mind, if you need to create a narrative like that, go ahead and create a narrative like that. That your grandson or granddaughter, whichever status their, gender fluidity is in the moment, that he or she is playing a role in this enormous tapestry or symphony that you can't see, and then get some sleep. Send them your blessings and then get some sleep.
Yeah. Well, you're basically saying settle your own self, and then you'll be well enough to take whatever action might be the best, or no action might be the best. But
yes, and you can't know it in advance with the conscious logical mind. Exactly.
Right. Things are too stirred up. That's true. Well, that's good. Thanks.
And of course, in this very moment, some breath work, some tapping, some goal canceling could be highly beneficial for you. And then because everyone's connected and you never heal alone, it benefits him as well, or her.
Right.
So as I like to say, my focus is on what might practically help people, me and anybody else that I deal with, have a better experience of life, be more loving, be more able to live into their true potential. Whatever that might be. You know that the the conversation yesterday on the second hour, I don't know who the young man was that was talking, but they were talking about um, armor and shields and gauntlets and preparing for war kind of thing, right? In the spiritual sense. Did you hear that show?
I did. That was Sean, who's doing an awful lot of, I think, transcribing of older files into present use files, whether MP3s or videos, I'm not sure, but he's taken on a huge task. And in the process, I think this is what's happened. I think he has gotten some use, made some use of the tools, and he's in there. He's doing them, using
So,
them.
so the point for me to bring it up is that that's a perspective that, and they were talking about this a good deal on the show yesterday. That's a perspective that's focused on the outside and outside attack and the need for armor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Michael was trying to point out that, in essence, there's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, "In my defenselessness,
Yes.
my perfect safety lies." Well, that's a disjointed statement, as so many of them are in um, the Course in Miracles.
It's a fantastic statement, though, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is. But now listen, if it had said, just use whatever format you want, like Michael Ryce's responsibility communication, no. Regulatory speech, that's the phrase I'm looking for. If you use Michael's regulatory speech, this is a case of a mishmash of things, right? So instead of just saying you are perfectly safe
Yeah.
in all situations, rest in your total perfect safety in you know in the flow of life in creation or the Christ mind or whatever, then it would be direct and positively stated in the way we like to, put our goals in the reality management worksheet. But instead it talks about defense. Right? It's just like where it says unconditional love. Wait a minute, there's conditional love that we're talking about. How about, total love, total acceptance? So the
Good
point of,
point.
of
That is the point.
the point of the message is that there's nothing that your true nature ever needs to have fear about or protect itself from. Your true nature is whole and complete. It can't be chipped, dented, rusted, faded, or broken in any way. When you pick up a sword or a shield, you're inviting attack. If you just relax, if you settle into your true nature, you can walk through the battlefield. These stories are there in the Bible as well, right? And 10,000 warriors can be shooting and you'll be untouched, right? Because the essence of the great teaching, whether it was from the Bhagavad Gita or Vasista's yoga or even 1,000 years before that, the essence is, look, who you truly are, your true nature, has perfect safety as its root, as its source. And it is not vulnerable to what you're focusing on in your physical realm. So when people say we've got we're spiritual warriors, and what they're doing is creating this internal experience of attack and need to defend. I don't see the value in that, and these teachings don't promote that as having value. So for any who would, like to get a little bit more clear on that, you can listen back to the second hour and 15 minutes of yesterday's show. And there's a lot of words around it, and Michael brings in, biblical passages that he's explaining. But the essence of it is, look, when you decide you're going to get tight and tense and defend against something, you're sending out incredibly intense emotional energy that's calling to the system to say, hey, look, I have fear in me. Come and help me see the roots of my fear so I can get rid of it. What that's going to look like is people attacking or people doing things that I interpret as an attack. And then that cycle is going to repeat until I get tired of the lather, rinse, and repeat, and I decide to quit pushing the start button on the washer. Did that make sense? Did I go off on a tangent?
It made sense. All of it, actually. Yep. The other words. I see what you mean. Oh, I'll mute.
So Linda, what's up?
May I share what I think might be a very helpful practical sharing for all of us?
No, but you
Very
can tell us
quickly.
what's on your mind.
Okay, I would love to tell you what's on my mind. I am so much like you, Susan, and I have made sort of a little surprising discovery for myself. I have come to see that when I need a certain outcome, I have already set a goal. And if I've already set a goal, I want my own way. And so if it's a negative goal and I am focused on the outcome, I'm not in the present moment, and I've definitely I have it tied to some sort of goal I need to look at. And so I sit down and ask a question when I'm in my sane mind and I don't want to insist on my outcome and my goal. I sit down and reflect and see what comes up for me. And it helps to ground me in the present moment. It also helps me to look at my own stuff and be willing maybe to disengage from that outcome, my goal, and my own stuff in a positive, practical way, like a worksheet of some kind, or asking a question and just sitting with it, not judging it. That's when it works best for me. I thought maybe that might be helpful.
Well, it sounds like what's been recommended over and over again in the core of this work. So I hope it's helpful.
And I learned it from you all.
Well, and we have such training to the opposite that one of Michael Ryce says he calls willingness the cosmic grease. Right? Grease the wheels, let the machine run, let it, perform its function. And it does so when it's got that willingness that allows it to keep functioning smoothly, right? Well, because of the significant intensity of our conditioning with both the carrot and the stick, we are both rewarded when we, quote, get it right, close quotes, and we are punished when we get it, quote, get it wrong, close quotes. So everybody who's listening to this, who at least those who've been raised in the Western world, they've got years, if not decades, of conditioning to do exactly the opposite of what you just recommended, Celinda. So I need to be willing to encounter those impulses within myself and those negative judgments again and again and again with gentleness towards myself and with the willingness to do something differently. Because as we all know, if I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to get the same results.
And sometimes it's just sitting. It's like, I don't know whether I'm being resistant or whether my little girl is so unsafe that this is where I am right now. And Urucha is saying, okay, sit with it. Keep asking. Be okay with where I am right now with the discomfort, because I don't like discomfort. And I suppose that's a form of meditation.
Well,
But thank you,
at
Tim,
least
for everything you said.
it at least has you looking in the right direction, which is inside.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you want to call it meditation or not, whether you want to call it healing or not, at least you're focused in the right place, which is internally.
And thank you for the intuition part that you just said, because I learned at a very young age not to trust my intuition, because I must be wrong. I felt like I was in a crazy making situation, but when you're very, very little, who's responsible? I am. So it's just really interesting to just sit and say, it's okay to just sit and look at this and trust yourself.
Yeah, and one of the key things there my mind is serving up is you can't just sit if your mind is telling you you're in mortal danger here.
Right.
And
good point.
And that is what, that's one of the key pieces that Michael highlights as part of the power person dynamic. The three prerequisites end with the third one, which says, I, as the one who has less control over things in my life in that moment, I reach the conclusion that this is life or death. This is a survival level situation. And if I hold on to that conclusion, then it's not really going to be very practical or even possible for me to just sit calmly and turn the focus inside.
And if I'm attached rather than bonded, that threat is going to include those around me that I've attached myself to and that I quote unquote need. So yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts for you?
No, thank you. Control, surrender, they're all one thing, aren't they?
Interesting. You say, no, I don't have anything else, and then you offer that. Yeah. No, they're not one thing, but they are, without one, there's no need for the other kind of thing. In the way our minds create stories about them. So.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you're entirely welcome and deserving. I realize we're close. We've got a minute or two before our time officially ends and or Michael and Jeannie's time officially begins. They have the more of a luxury like they did yesterday to go another 14 or 15 minutes. I'm feeling, because of what is scheduled in my life and because of not wanting to run into their time and split the community, that I like to end on time. So I will thank you all for being here. Remind you that the Tuesday, there will be a support group tonight. If you have any interest in joining us for that, all the information you would need is available at the Mindshift